screen. So I'm just going to arrange myself.
No worries. Yep, we can see your screen. So I'll start the timer.
Alrighty, perfect. So today I'm going to be sharing with you my, so last time I presented a proposal for a large online first year psychology subject. And so this is going to be the implementation or practice of that proposal. So just a very quick, actually maybe I will begin by showing you my Canvas page, which you'll be able to see here. So I've created an online Canvas page, and that's the platform that we'll be using for this subject. And I actually made the subject overview as a Adobe Spark, which was what I had up there. So for the students, they will have an Adobe Spark for their subject overview. I'm not sure if this is like an okay practice, but I thought it was a bit more exciting than just a table on Canvas. So looking quickly at an overview of the subject, basically it's going to be the purpose of this subject is going to be really skills focused, because all of the topics are going to be quite brief, and so the things that it's going to unite and collaboration, teamwork, and some learning outcomes. So some of the learning outcomes that I'd like to draw your attention to is in particular, there's more generic skills, I suppose, than there are specific knowledge and content skills. So again, highlighting that these are really transferable. Our student cohort is really diverse, and not a lot of the students doing our subjects are interested in this subject, are interested in becoming a clinical psychologist, which is where this could eventually lead. But they are gaining lots of really critical skills, particularly in evaluation of research, producing and applying constructive feedback. Argument and logical reasoning is a really important aspect of this subject, and working collaboratively in teams. And this one here, discuss and integrate diverse individual and cultural perspectives, is a really important aspect of this subject. And because we have such a diverse and large learner cohort, we have a really great opportunity to actually promote and support this. And that kind of draws upon our social and cultural learning theories and social constructivism. And the learning design that I went with to complement this was the conversational framework by Laura Lard, which I'll describe when I get to those moments. So in regards to the assessment, I won't go through this right now, but what I really want to the assessment is all laid out there in my Adobe Spark with the link on our student Canvas page. But I just wanted to talk to the timetable for the subject. So I split it up into asynchronous and synchronous learning. We have Zoom practical classes, assessment, and then we have synchronous student academic support or learning support, and asynchronous learning support for students. So just to, my Adobe Spark goes through these things in lots of detail underneath here, but I'll just really quickly just share my meaning for each of these things with you. So in terms of asynchronous learning, instead of having lectures that go for 1 hour that are recorded, we're going to have interactive online modules that are then that will take about 50 minutes to complete the same amount of time it would take to do a lecture, and followed by a 5-question quiz that will be worth 1% of the overall mark. So there'll be 24% in total leading up to completion of these online modules. And this will be complemented by a 1-hour live Zoom webinar with the associated lecturer for that section. And that might take the form of a Q&A, or it could take the form of actually doing some problem-based learning, some peer discussion, and they could use Zoom. And I know a few lecturers of ours like to use YouTube as well if they are doing a Q&A. Now, the Zoom practical classes will explore both the written assessment, which is going to be a psychological lab report, as well as promote those aspects of the conversational framework that promote the peer modelling cycle, which is that collaboration where students work together to produce a piece of work and model each other's thinking and behaviours, and then discussion, so where the peer conversational framework where they discuss ideas. And so that's how we will rotate amongst our tutorial programs. We'll focus on either a collaboration, having a student peer output, and then discussion based classes as well. So I'll take you through the assessment later, but for the synchronous online support, we're going to run optional shut up and write sessions, which are just, you can do this on Zoom. You have a link for students, they can join in, and then you have a 25-minute time of silent working, independent learning, independent working, studying, writing, whatever that is, followed by a 5-minute break. And in that 5-minute break, students can talk to each other, they can talk to you, and it's a really nice kind of collaborative way to get work done productively, feel like you're part of a community, and also ask questions and ask for support during those 5-minute breaks. And instead of doing shut up and write sessions, we'll probably also do some assignment help Q&A sessions or workshops as well. In terms of asynchronous support, there'll be Canvas discussion boards, Google Docs and Padlets that will be used at the preference of the lecturer. Lecturers like to use different things, but we will make sure the students are well able to use all of these tools, and a Canvas discussion board for the psychological lab report. So now I will show you guys some examples of some of these things. So in terms of the asynchronous modules, or actually I should highlight quickly that the way that I've set out the subject overview is, instead of having like an ecology of resources section, I've actually got like the online learning space where each of these things will be happening. So this will be happening, the asynchronous learning will be happening in Canvas modules and quizzes, and then the supportive like online learning tools and technologies that will be going along with that. And so I've actually linked to the actual space in the spaces where the students actually need to be. And then here in the online learning tools and technologies, I've linked to student guides to help them use it, help them to use these technologies. And so I've done that for each of my sections so that the students can get support for those technologies that they'll be using and know where they'll be learning. So if I go to my playpen now, and I'll go to the module section. So obviously we've got an introductory module with a subject overview, general discussion, handbooks and links, teacher contact information, and then I've done quite a similar thing to I think what Rebecca did, where I'm going to have a collaborative map where students drop where they feel like a place that they feel they're connected to in some way. It doesn't have to be somewhere they live. It can be somewhere, it doesn't even have to be somewhere they've been, just kind of a conversation starter and highlighting that diverse cultural backgrounds and academic disciplines and all those different things that come together with our student cohort, and asking them to perhaps share their response and engage with each other here and begin that community of inquiry, that student connectedness and online learning community. So an example of the online module here, this is a module about sleep hygiene. So students will do small tasks. So the first task here, I've asked them to download and fill out a sleep diary, just to think about, how did you sleep last night? This was just from the UK Sleep Council. And then I've asked them to think about, is this a good night's sleep, yes or no? In the next section, I've actually created a short video where I've described how much sleep is recommended, ways to tell if you're getting enough sleep, and then ask them to think about, after this video, do you think you are getting enough sleep? And this is how the module goes through. So this next one's thinking about things that can disrupt your sleep. And I've asked them to brainstorm some ideas about things that may disrupt their sleep. And that's one that I've added in, which is my PhD topic. So, so hopefully there might be hundreds and hundreds of posts on here, and students will be interested to see what other students have written as well. So that's how this module will go along. And Oh no, I'm running really terribly out of time. I'm so sorry. I was a bit nervous when I started. And then this will be followed by a quiz, which is in that module section. So I might make a video to explain the rest of my thing. And yeah, and then there'd be like a quiz here to go there. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. Sorry for running out of time there.
It's all right. Thank you, Caitlin. Looks really nice, and I like the use of Adobe Spark and the way that you've linked it directly to the resources they'll be using. So well done. Let's move on to Paternamon.
Hi. Yes. Okay. I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So then let's start. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So today I will talk about my subject that I'm currently teaching. Actually, so this is my canvas that is live, and so this subject is software modeling and design. And I want to give you a little bit background about the student. So this subject is a third-year undergrad student, which is a core subject of the computing and software system major in Bachelor of Science. And it is also a fundamental knowledge for the master student in software engineering as well. So the student can can join this project in two mainstream, which is the undergrad student and a master student. And since this is a last year subject or a master subject, so we assume that the student have a knowledge in programming, some fundamental knowledge about how to program, how to build the software. But for this subject, we're gonna teach a more how to design a complex system. So let's go to the subject overview. The main goal of this subject is to teach techniques and approach how to create the software system and design the software system to be easy to maintain and easy to be involved. So then the framework, the theory that this subject is designed is based on the constructionism, where students will learn and realize the concept via the creation of software model with the appropriate designs for various computing problems. And the teaching approach that I use is a blended learning approach, which is very similar to the flipped classroom, but instead of having a group discussion only, we also keep the face-to-face lecture to ensure that to keep some sense of the engagement between not again engagement, but I mean to introduce some materials to the student and then give them some time to learn by themselves. So so the overview of the teaching and learning activities then will be a weekly 1 hour live lectures and a weekly 2 hour workshops, and then we have project assignments. And this is the tools that we use. This is a give an overview of the tool that we use in this subject, which is the Canvas, Zoom, lecture capture. But basically the goal of each tool is to support the collaboration between the student, for example, the Draw.io, the Google Docs, and also since we want to have some synchronous activity, so then Zoom will be the main point of contact between the lecturer, the tutor, and the students. And it will be the main point for the main communication point for the workshop as well. So this is overall of the subject. And then when we go to the modules, in the modules, again, I'm using the blended learning approach. So I'm trying to ensure that I provide the learning resource as much as possible. So the first module will be like the center point, the starting point for the student, where can they learn the basic knowledge or the background of that we're gonna use in this subject. And then this is just a collection of the lectures, but for each week of the workshop is the main point. So each week of the workshop will provide a package that the student have to prepare themselves before the workshop. So it will be in a pre-workshop learning, which is also include the lectures, and we also provide more supplementary materials. And then this is the activity that they have to do during the workshop. And then I give like one module for 1 week. So if we look into in each page, the student will see all the slides, all the materials, the recordings, and same for the supplementary materials. We give them more details that they have to learn, they have to prepare themselves before the workshop. And then in the workshop, they will do an exercise as a team, together as a team, and then they have to present the work to demonstrate the active participation to the tutor. So the goal of the workshop is to ensure that they catch up all the content in each week, and also they can demonstrate and reflect their understanding to the tutor. And if the tutor finds some point that the student feel confusing, then they can help the student to clarify that point. So in the workshop, then instead of giving a mark for the corrections, I give a mark on active participation. So this is a part of the assessment. So then the marks will be, they have to demonstrate that they actively work on the workshop exercise and demonstrate to the tutor. So, and this is some example that I give to the student, like how can they demonstrate the active participations. And then there is a mark for every week. And then, since that due to this online and the COVID situation, we give some flexibility that there will be some flexibility that there can be some workshop. And then for the group-based project, this is another tool assessment, which is also still focusing on the collaboration, how they can work together, because deciding the software is the best when they work as a team. But when the workshop exercise or the project assignment, the problems are not very authentic. This is because the real world problem is sometimes too complex, or the student might overcomplicate the designs unnecessary. So instead of focusing on the authentic problem, we create an artificial problems to ensure that the student can apply the techniques that they learn in the class to solve the particular problems. But still, the problem will be quite intuitive for the student. For example, like we use a book borrowing system in the library as an example, so the student can get some sense that how it's going to be like in the real world, but the requirement or the problem may not exactly outside of the world. But I'm hoping that this is going to make some sense between it. Yeah, I think that's all for me. If I don't miss anything, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So are there some questions from anyone? We've got just under 2 minutes left. Nope, it's all good.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
I can ask.
No,
I'm just looking at what my notes were.
Yeah.
You mentioned connection between students and tutors. So does each tutor have a sort of a defined set of students? Do they keep the same set of students throughout the
Yes, they
semester?
have the same set of the students throughout the semester.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sure. So that makes more sense. Yeah, because some of the classes I have, we do that, but others, the tutors are sort of in a big group. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think your comment that the assessment may not be authentic is that just because it's not a real problem doesn't mean that it's not authentic. you know, if it's designed to get them thinking how they should be thinking and critiquing, etc., then I think it's still authentic. So that's what you've designed, I think, is good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, Sam is here now. Sam, are you ready to present if we get you on now?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Sorry about the delay. It's going to open up my playpen here.
So after Sam, we'll go on to Pauline. And just a reminder while Sam's setting up to do the Google Doc peer review sheet as well.
All right, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep, we're all good. I'll start the timer.
Okay, so this is the bioinstrumentation subject. It's a master's level subject, which usually done within the first two, usually in the final year of their master's, but they can do it in their first year of their master's as well. The subject is really focused on kind of bringing together a lot of the concepts that they've learned previously and trying to put them all together into a coherent project as such. But one of the things that they, one of the key elements that biomedical engineering as a whole needs to cover is how do students go out and what do they do in the workplace? And a lot of them will work in hospitals, or they'll work in developing their own medical devices or testing medical devices. And so this subject is really preparing them and bringing all of that information together in one place. So if we look at this, this is the overview. The overview, I've kind of compressed it from last time to try and make it a little bit more easier to understand. And so we've got three basic tasks over the semester. One is the pre-reading, which is really based on peer pre-reading together. Then there is the tutorial, where a lot of the problems that we will help the students go through is really problems that the students themselves have to come up with, rather than us coming up with the problem for them. They are the ones who would come up with a problem or challenge each other in making these circuits harder, or be able to do a particular task. It's going to be very much question and answer based. And the final thing is the workshop. And the workshop element is they should have their own devices that they can then play with and develop throughout the semester. But they will start with coming up with their own problem, and then they work out what are the different elements that need to come together to solve this problem, and then they'd go on to solving that problem. So it is very much a problem-based design in the workshop, and there are no lectures. And the reason for the no lectures is really that they have to do a lot of the peer pre-reading, which is focused on peer interaction, and then the tutorial, which is also focused on really peer learning aspects. So if we go into the subject overview, the main intended learning outcomes from this, these four that are listed here, that they have to know how to design and build a biomedical instrument that complies with all of the regulatory requirements for medical devices, whether that's a wearable device or if it's a hospital-based device. They need to understand the key considerations for how biological signals are generated and how you would measure them. What are the key requirements for measuring such devices? What kind of signal conditioning you're going to apply to them to make sense of these signals coming in, and what are the safety concepts that underlie this. And all of these need to be consolidated in their problem-based learning. And these are the real things that are being assessed, but even though these are the main parts that are being assessed, they're going to be doing a problem, more a technical problem and solution, and implementing a solution, but the things that we're going to examine are these four. There's three tools that we want to use within this subject. The first one is GitHub. So I'll open up a GitHub and hopefully, yep, there we go. So within GitHub, what we do is to create a project. And within the project, we can then assign as many students as we want who are in the class. And each student will then submit will be assigned a project, and they will then submit any changes to their designs as it happens. We won't be marking them on a workshop by workshop basis, but rather they submit it every week, but we assess the quality of that at the end. So the first 3 weeks we'll have formative assessments where we just tell them how well they're doing in their comments. Hopefully by the end of 3 weeks, they're well and truly able to do that independently, and then we'll assess them right at the end where marks are associated with that. So the first tool is GitHub. The second tool that we want to use is Perusal. So Perusal is a tool that came out of Harvard, I believe. Oh, all right, I need to log in. Well, that's strange. Can't remember where my login is, but I might leave that for now for some reason. Anyway, maybe I can go in through here. I can log in there. So Perusal is a tool that came out of Harvard, and the main thing is that it emphasizes peer learning. So I'm going to log in as a student so you can see what this looks like. Once we log in, so I've set up an assignment. I put in one of the documents that I'd asked the students to review, and the students go in to work on this assignment. And as they work on this assignment, they can write in comments throughout. And as they write comments, other students can then answer these comments or make further comments on top of that. They could say things like, I don't understand what's happening here. Don't understand this. What? Always harder when you're trying to create a new comment. Anyway, you can put in more conversations to assess that. Now, at the end of this, what will happen is you go back to the original page. This is not going to let me do that. Now, in the original page, what it'll do is it has a analytics built into the back of this. So to see who's been commenting, what are the areas of confusion that they have. It'll give you a confusion report of things that students don't understand. So then we can take this information, and in the tutorials, we'll use this confusion information to go, all right, now the students are having trouble with this. So let's elaborate on this concept more than everything else. So this lectures become very dynamic, and they're very much question and answer based, and a tutorial style more than a lecture style. Now the third thing that we will use is Slack. And so we've been using Slack for a while. I will just, hopefully you can see my desktop here. This is a Slack channel for another subject that, that I've been teaching. And basically you can ask, I use it more as a discussion board as well as question and answers. So today I had a question from one of the students saying, I'm not quite sure what this means, explain that. And so I gave them probably too long an answer, but you know, it's a way of having lots of discussions as we go rather than at the end of the semester. So that's the main tools that we'd use. And all of this can be done online, which is the main part of why we're using these tools, is that they can do all of their development. We don't have to see that up front, but we can see what they're doing online as we go. Now my time's going to come to an end, so I'll finish off with the assessments. The assessments, there's 5 different assessments. The first one is the laboratory logs, which is really how they submit their comments to GitHub about how their designs are changing. The second one is a design proposal that they have to submit that talks about what their proposed design is, how they came up with this solution, and how they'd go about implementing it. There is a mid-semester open book exam. I was a bit split about whether or not we do this, but it feels like it's a good one. So they have a bit of an idea of how the oral exam will go, but in a format that they're really familiar with, which is an exam. And so I decided to keep the open book exam in there. The fourth one is a validation report, another just a report of how they've been doing it, kind of consolidating what they've done in their GitHub and their reading into one report. And the final one is an oral exam, which is really based on how we run the tutorials. It's the same types of questions that we'd ask them, and we'd be posing similar problems to what they've posed in the classroom. And hopefully that will mean that they're actually engaging with the subject overall. And all of these are really based on this. In addition to this, I was considering whether we have an assessment marked for the perusal, but at the moment I've stayed away from it, but that's something to think about. But that's the main summary of the assessments. And then at the end I have what we'd be teaching as well, but I'll finish up with that.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, and I guess once you've done it the first time and got some feedback, that's going to, you know, feedback into the redesign, and perhaps then you might look at, do you need to have actual marks for the perusal or not, depending on how well that's gone. Okay, great. So our next presenter is Pauline.
So I need to share my screen. This one. This.
Here we go. Now it's coming through. Cool.
Okay, so you can see my screen.
Yeah, I'll start the timer now.
So let me start timing as well, because when you are timing, I can't see that my timing is up. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to just have a brief presentation about my subject design. So my subject is a second year. So maybe I should go to home. So the subject I'm teaching is called Elements of Data Processing. So it is a core. I'll just move the camera because otherwise I can't see the screen. It is a core subject sort of in the data science stream. So there are many, so it's a second year subject. And so because of this and because of the popularity of data science in general, the student cohort is very large. It is about 500 plus now this semester. And the student background, they are all young people, but the background is quite diverse. So we have students taking this course because they can take it as a breadth subject. So they as long as they meet the prerequisite, and then so they are students from commerce, from School of Design, from engineering, from math, like science major students. So that is the student background. So the way I'm seeing this is that this is an introduction subject. We will try and cover everything that is, with very minimum, very little pre-assumed knowledge about what they need to know about data science. And basically, it is an introduction subject where we introduce the typical data science data pipeline. So if you can see on the subject overview, I've included this picture to show that, just in the subject overview, when students firstly, land on the Canvas page, that's what they immediately get the overview. And of course, we're going to cover that later on in the lectures as well. But so immediately, rather than the sort of boring text that we get in the handbook, just show them the diagrams and, in a very, very concise way, show them what the topics are. And also have some scope of what is not covered, so that it sets the scene for the student very clearly what they can expect from this subject. And then that also included the ecology of resources in the subject overview, and then give a bit of introduction, sort of a explanation. However, I take this opportunity to actually highlight the importance of this e-portfolio that maybe they, for most of them, they are not used to it. They haven't seen it before, but I think this is quite a cool idea that I got from this subject. this GCAT subject that I'm learning. So I make sure that they are there. And then so the rest is quite just some sort of more key information from the handbook. So the timetable, it is a 1 hour lecture because I have flipped the class. So the Zoom lecture is only 1 hour. Traditionally, it is a 2 hour lecture. So the other hour is sort of turning into a flip class. So it's an asynchronous learning where they use this time to watch the videos, etc. And then so we tell them that they need to watch it before they come to the live lecture. And assessment. So I want to say this assessment, this is planning for the next year. So I'm not quite sure whether it's going to be purely online or there is a bit of a blended option available. So I am still sticking it to a 60% where I want to include an announcement, a presentation in the assessment. But if it's totally online, I think it will be, I will just make it into a 50%. So sorry, this is a small detail. So let me go to the Zoom. So the modules, this is where I tell the students, so in the announcement and everything, this is where I tell the student, this is the real hub of the subject. And then through welcome, they go to the same subject overview. They get staff information, which is the lecturers, and I'll add the tutors, etc. later. And then, and all other things. And then, so one heading that's important is the housekeeping of how I would like the subject to be communicated. So like they use different channels. And then, so that's the welcome. After that, I introduce them all the tools that we need in this subject before I go to the weekly modules. So the philosophy of the way I organize this Canvas module page is that this is one stop for them to link to everything they need. So I'll go to the ecology of resources later, but in the week one, just this is a mock-up because I'm not teaching this semester. So this is what I'm going to include in the next semester. So using the cognitive load theory, in my previous presentation about my draft design, the pre-class micro videos are pre-recorded. That's where they use the 1 hour asynchronous hour in the learning. And as you can see, there are still some refactoring required, but the aim is to keep the videos bite size. So it's all quite short. Then it comes to the synchronous lectures. So this is a 1 hour Zoom. I include the links and everything. So even though they can find the other informations as well in the Zoom menu, I make sure that they don't miss out. So don't miss out the information. So the information is provided to them in multiple channels. So I think in the online setting, that really helps the students. And then I also use, as outlined in the ecology of resources, a survey to actually show, to actually interact with the students and actually find out what. So this is an example of the week one, just for us to know them more. So maybe, the dynamics and the sort of student motivations can change. So we use this for that purpose. And Kahoot I used to use Poll Everywhere, but I think Kahoot is more fun and more suited for young people. So I'm going to use Kahoot as my online quiz tools. And as you see, this is still a placeholder because I haven't got anything concrete. So it's quite a long list, but if you can see under week one, student has an overview of everything they need. So in the workshop as well, and the quizzes. So every week I'll have a quiz for them. So this is also a synchronous learning, but as just a placeholder example to show them that, after they've watched the video, they can then take these to take a quiz questions to check their understanding. And this is not part of the assessment. It's just for them sorry, I should go to module. It's just for them to sort of have other resources to practice to check their understanding, and there's no pressure. And then the discussion. So we use the discussion. So all the links and information is here, but I can just show you if the student click on it, this is what they see. Okay, so these are the interface is quite nice. We have categories, we have the sort of different thread, and the good thing about this is that what students do answer students' questions. So you can mark whether it's a tutor or students. If I can see whether there are some. Yeah, I didn't prepare earlier, but there are some questions that, you know, tutor answering or student actually jump back to answer these questions. So we've used this in the last semester, and it was quite well received. So we'll use it again. It's quite easy. As you can see that I can use, it's a very flexible tool for them to actually articulate what their discussion topic and their questions are. So that's its discussion. And also because this is a subject that doesn't have a prescribed textbook, there are some other contemporary material, case studies and things like that. In addition to run them in the live synchronous lectures, we will also provide additional pointers for students who are more interested in you know, learning further. But nonetheless, all the material here is you know, our best effort to curate the information that gives the students, you know, at the end of the subject, they get the best baseline in order to advance into more specialized subject like statistics or the, what do you call that, the third year machine learning subject, or even go on to do the masters. Okay, so I've got 30 seconds. And then to increase the social interactions, we also have guest lectures. That is quite interesting to see the industry people coming into the subject and talk to the students. Now, I don't have any time to talk into the assignment, but the assignment is basically incorporating the constructionism theory that I've introduced in my previous presentation, where they do need to collaborate together in order to produce an artifact that they can socialize, they can actually show to their future employers. And final remark I want to make is something I learned that's critical in the online learning, is that the social presence is really important. So I like the early ideas where some of the announcement, if I can, I'll make them into a video recording of me talking, and make use of an announcement so that it's a student actually receive regular communications more frequently than a physical lecture otherwise would be.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Pauline. You know, I particularly like the way you've used GitHub as an e-portfolio format, which I think works really well for your class. Be interesting to see how you would monitor that and provide feedback for a larger class. Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah. So actually, the university has GitLab. So because people have some
okay, right.
we can actually use the university private repository.
Okay.
Anyway,
Cool.
Part2 won't share that with me, so I think a lot of CS subjects are all doing the same.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so our next presenter is Brian. Brian said his internet's not going particularly well, but we'll give it a go and see how we get on.
Yeah, thanks. I was part of Carolus Street, which had that big storm go through. It's the power's dropping in and out, and most of the road doesn't have power yet, but I'll do my best. So let me share my screen. Yep. Okay, so the unit that I'm wanting to explore with you is a unit I'm currently involved in, we're going to get it done for online pretty quickly, as all of us have had to try and do. And I'll try and I was told in my peer feedback I was too theoretical the last time, so I'll try and get down to some of the detail this time. So it is a kind of a master's level unit. It's called an integrative capstone, for students to kind of essentially end up with a research project at the end of it in relation to their own kind of vocational context in whatever kind of space they find themselves in. It kind of has students doing different awards. So those who are involved in sort of pastoral care, working in hospitals and aged care and other places like that. And then those who have done Masters of Theology and this is kind of coming to the end of their kind of program. So students from very different, tend to be on the older demographic compared to some of the units that I teach, which has made some of the technology stuff a little bit challenging. But the learning outcomes are kind of similar, but slightly different depending on the wards that people find themselves in. So I'll come to some of the kind of design learning frameworks and stuff in a second, but essentially because it's a research project at the end, we really only have 4 sessions to the semester together. I do kind of a lot of one-on-one with the students over that period of time, but kind of a session every 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks, dealing with kind of different aspects of the unit as we go along. So the major what I've done in this unit, and also another unit that I'm doing this semester, is to use the flipped classroom approach. So I know the flipped classroom approach with the kind of idea that to make certainly there's a lot of benefits for students, the research has shown, and a way to try and make it more engaging and dynamic for the students as well. So what I've done with this is I have very little presentation space in the times that I'm together with the students on Zoom. But there's a lot of reading that the students have to do. So we unfortunately use Moodle, not as fancy as you guys at Melbourne with Canvas. But that's the kind of unit that I'm working with in terms of the theology and integrative capstone. And we're about kind of 5 weeks into it now. But you can see the different blocks where the pre-reading that I would want students to do for the flipped class approach, which happens to be, in this case, my book on methodology and a journal article. And then the same with the second topic, for instance, which is as another methodology reading. So students are expected to kind of read those materials prior to the class. And then what we've done for the sessions that we have got into is I'll do kind of a brief overview when we get together in the Zoom session, but to use breakout groups and group work for students to actively engage with the reading in terms of questions that they might have and how they would be seeking to apply that to their own context. And because their own contexts are so very different, a kind of collaborative process tends to work quite well. And I've found this effective again in the other unit that I've been doing, which has been with a younger group and a bit of a larger class in terms of the flipped approach as well, being really, really useful, and students coming quite prepared to engage and having already read the material beforehand, as opposed to historically what I would do in terms of delivery. In terms of the assessment, if I can jump back to that, branching out into peer assessment, I can confess was new for me. So that this is a bit of a challenge, but there's 4 levels, 4 assessments, I should say, that kind of lead to that final project at the end, which is the 5,500 word essay. But what I tried to do with at least 2 of these assessments was to try and get students to work together in terms of their communities of learning, and whether that's through the peer assessment, but also with the seminar presentation, which I'll speak to in a second. So what I did with the peer assessment, initially I had grand ideas of wanting to use Flipboard for that. When I saw the kind of class that I was dealing with, then I went for a boring old forum, but hopefully that achieved some of the outcomes. So the students had to write a peer assessment, write their own, their kind of how they got to their research question, and then students would write 2 responses to that. So you can kind of see that in the peer assessment space here, where I did the forum, and students, they'll initially write their concern research question, and then students are writing their replies to that. They then take that as one document, submit it to turn it in, which is then graded. The idea with the scaffolding approach all the way through from their literature review in response to the research question and then the seminar, which is what I'll kind of conclude with, is that particularly with the first assessment, that students can learn from each other, and that would help them develop ultimately a better project, but they'll be able to integrate their assessment that they've learned together into the seminar presentation. And so the seminar presentation, I haven't got there yet. You can see it's still coming. But my hope with that kind of approach there is to do something similar to what has happened in this class, with 10 students present for 10 minutes, and they can get peer feedback as well. But one of the key criteria in the rubric is, have they integrated the assessment peer feedback from assessment 1 in terms of doing that. And they'll be able to give peer feedback again on the seminar assessment, which will hopefully then come together in their final essay in terms of the methodology that they've followed in terms of their research question. So in terms of like basic activities in class, as I mentioned, there's the breakout groups, etc., that we use. But I've also used those, and I know I'm supposed to only be doing one unit, but I thought I'd just show another one because of a bigger class where I kind of tried something different. And I don't think I have it open here. I do as well. Is the flipped classroom. I've used it here as well for the other units that I teach, where there's reading resources which students will have to engage with. And again, we go into breakout groups, but the thing that's different to the other one is using Kahoot as well, which helps student engage with the reading, which I think the previous presenter mentioned as well as a useful way to kind of get students working together. So yeah, so far, one of the worries I had was how students would respond to the flipped approach, because it's something kind of different, and it's they feel that they're often expecting more kind of material from myself to be driven into space. So far, it's largely been positive, and it's been good to see the kind of interaction that students are having. I suppose I'll have to wait and see to the student unit evaluations to when they eventually come through to whether I've achieved some of the goals. And that's kind of it, really, in terms of the things I wanted to share with you guys today.
Great, thank you, Brian. And your internet held up, so that's good.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Someone got a question for Brian? So I guess my question would be, you know, what sort of feedback have you had from your students so far? You're kind of doing this as you're going, so yeah.
Yeah, good. It's funny, I've tried a few different things in a few different units. In terms of the flipped classroom approach, students have found that kind of really quite helpful. They enjoy the kind of breakout group stuff where they actually engage with the readings as well. You know, I kind of, sometimes the online format has worked better for some of the group work than I've found in face-to-face classes, in a way that's actually quite good. So yeah, so far I haven't had many complaints in terms of people expecting more knowledge and stuff from me. I mean, I'm really hoping, and it does seem like the literature suggests that it does benefit students ultimately with their marks, this kind of approach, in terms of the flipped classroom approach. So hopefully that'll work itself through. In terms of the Kahoot stuff, that's more of a younger cohort of students, and I also use Google Collaborative Map for that one as well. That had quite a lot of take up, and there was quite a bit of energy in terms of those two areas. So I'm quietly optimistic, Thomas, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's all really good, really positive. Okay, thank you, Brian.
Sure.
So our next presenter is Paula, and Paula has pre-recorded her session. So if I just play that back and make sure I share the audio button. Right, so this is Paula's presentation. Hopefully you can hear the audio.
Hi everyone, this is Paula. I'm going to show you the prototype for what would be a new elective subject to GCAT. It'll be entitled Curriculum for Self-Regulated Learning. This would be an online subject for a small cohort. The course will be hosted in Canvas, and I'll now show you the main pages and functionalities I set up here. So first, the welcome page, there will be links to subject overview page, modules, and the recurrent Zoom link for the weekly online lessons. I've put a welcome video that I would record just so they would know me before actually getting to know me. And I thought it would be interesting to put the online learning design for the course straight right on the initial page, so they could have a look every time they logged in. For the subject overview, I included a summary, and in the summary of the subject, I also included some aspects about the pedagogical strategies used, which can be accessed in more detail in the course map. So the course map, I used the H5P app or external tool that you can embed into Canvas to create something a bit more interactive. So I've listed the main pedagogical strategies, and they can just click and read a little bit more about it, how this would be applied in this subject, each of these aspects. What I really liked about this is that I could put videos and pictures, images, and different things. So the idea would be to actually make the whole learning design a bit more interactive. And they could actually link to different things, I think. And the idea behind this is to make a place that they would come and actually interact with the course map to familiarize with it. So something to get their attention a little bit more. So I also included a technology map. So this would be the Ecology of Resources, and I just used a different name that would be a bit more common and more of a common name. And here are all the tools that are used in the course. So into the learning outcomes, I've added the generic skills just to respond to some feedback from the presentation that I got. And the assessment overview. So I've put all the main assessments here, the details. And one important aspect of this subject is the access to different exemplars for each of the assessment, because that's already a strategy related to self-regulated learning, which would be the topic of the subject. So a bit of a modeling for the students. And then the timetable, topics, and activities. And here I created for each week what they would do. And I did this only because creating the prototype, it wasn't loading the dates for each, for example, pre-lecture activities. So I created one and I replicated for each week, which in the real course, I would create one for each week. So this could be actually automatically created by Canvas, but I manually created here for the purpose of this prototype. Okay, so this is the subject overview, and then modules. There are details about studying in the subject, so the course map and the technology map, which I already showed to you. So the exemplars page that also has a link in the subject overview. So exemplar for each of the assessment, the description of that exemplar and a link to it. And the idea that I have the link here and I have the link at the subject overview is just to have access to things in different places. Because this is a new subject, I wouldn't know exactly how students would use it, would use the LMS to access resources. So that's something to review on a second iteration of the course. What would be the most effective way to present things? It could be that, you know, just having everything on modules rather than on subject overview would be more efficient because they would go just to one place. Anyway, trying to stick to 10 minutes, then we would have weekly activities that they be expected to complete. And I'll show you a few here. So here I have the pre-lecture activities because this would be a flipped classroom format. And again, I use the H5P to create an interactive video. So this is a video from YouTube. And what happens
about what they're doing.
We can
so they're not just completing tasks, but they're actually getting better as learners when they're on their own and away from me. So
here I created this, this man just said a definition of self-regulated learning. And then I've created a question: is self-regulated learning a new concept to you? Elaborate. So I can sort of gauge their prior knowledge before they actually come to the lecture. And that would be the whole idea of the pre-lecture activities. So videos and some texts to read. Next is the learning diary. So the learning diary would be a very important element of this course because it is a structured way to promote self-regulated learning. And every week they would complete a survey, and here it is as an online quiz, and I decided to use an online quiz rather than a blog for a few different reasons. First I'll say that the aim of the learning diary is for them to reflect on their learning journey each week. So how they're learning, what strategies are they using, what have they understood or not that week, what can they do to improve the next week, something along those lines. And I decided to use a quiz because this would be adaptable. It would be a format that would be adaptable for large scale, which are a lot of the subjects at the University of Melbourne. So students in this subject that I'm showing to you would be university teachers, and most of them teach in large undergraduate subjects. So this would be an example for them to experience that, but also see that this would be one way to scale it. Another reason was because using online quizzes, I would have better control of submission, who submitted and who did not submit. And as you can see here, I've created in a way that you can allow multiple attempts, and they can view previous attempts of the quiz. So this means that it would also work as a repository for them to consult or view their previous entries. So those are the reasons behind the learning diary. So back to the modules, this subject would also have blog posts and comments and presentations, just like we're having at Duke 90970. So it's pretty similar, and I've set up in a way that they would use also Canvas assignments to submit their posts and comments. And as you can see, I used rubrics and different rubrics for each assessment, so students can have really clear what's expected of them. And the main project would be a Canvas assignment. So they would upload a document, and I would use the peer assessment engine to get the peer review of that project. And I think that's it. That's the functionality of the prototype. The idea again would be for them to set up their profile and link to their blog so they could so everyone could see everyone's posts and interact with everyone. And I think I'll be running out of time soon. So, all right. Thank you.
Right, so that was Paula's presentation, and seeing a thumbs up there from Lyle. So our last presenter for today is Andrea. Over to you, Andrea.
Share my screen.
Yep, that's working. So we'll start the timer now.
Yes.
Okay, hello. The course prototype I'm developing is collaborative decision making as a module under the integrated project delivery or major project delivery program for students doing a Master of Construction Management degree. I have introduced the learning design framework and learning theories in last presentation. Thank you very much for your comments. In this presentation, I'll focus on explaining the learning activities designed in this module in response to your comments and inquiries. I'll quickly take you through the subject guide. The main purpose of this module is to provide students an insight into the complexity of procurement and delivery of major construction projects, and how, as a project manager, can make collaborative decisions in the complex situation of project delivery. The learning approach is based on social learning theories, as some of you suggested, through a series of lectures and breakout group sessions. The contact hours are 3 hours a week, 1 hour for lecture, 2 hours for group sessions. I'll quickly get through. There are 6 learning outcomes. I'll skip them. The main purpose is to develop students' personal capabilities of making collaborative decisions in real-world situations. There are some generic skills to develop from this module, such as critical thinking, system thinking, argument, and personal leadership skills. So the assessment will be based on 2 group projects. The first project is to establish the complexity of the situation in which the collaborative decisions are being made. The second project is to make collaborative decisions. So only if you are able to make that decision when your interest is at risk, then you are really able to make and to have that capability of collaborative decision making. So here this is the detailed assessment tasks. For each project, students need to do a group presentation, a group report on a project business case, and then an individual report on the working process. They also need to provide feedback to peer group presentations. So this is the key chart that we can use to explain how the learning activities are organized. The target students are 100 students doing Master of Construction Management degree. So the 100 students will join 5 large groups, 20 in each group. The groups will assume a specific stakeholder's role in the project life cycle. So they will become, one group will become the project financier, another group will become client, and design consultant, contractor, facility manager. So these 5 groups. And some of you asked, how could I find so many industry advisors? And if we have all these roles, we only need to find 1 person from each of the categories. Project financier, we can find someone from the banks who are doing investment to projects. They are also monitoring the project. And design consultant, we can find an architect from AIA. And contractor, we find a project manager from AIB, Australian Institute of Building. So this, we got each group, we have a tutor and an industry advisor. Now, this is inside a student organization. 20 students in one group, they will have to work in an organizational structure. It's an ad hoc group will not work effectively. So here I suggest an organizational structure. Students should have a project director and a project manager, then smaller teams. The tutor will liaise with industry advisor and student project director, and I will oversee all of this to guide the industry advisor and tutor to keep learning activities on the track. We will assume that we are at the center of the community of practice, because we are trying to teach the most advanced industry practice. So this is a reference group organizational structure. Students can adapt that structure according to their own abilities and preferences. So here we have a more detailed weekly learning activities and ecology of resources. Each session has 1 hour lecture to teach the main concepts of major project delivery to guide the group work. And the break-up group session, for example, the first week, students join a group. The group decide which stakeholder they want to play and set up some general plans. The second week, they are to set up a collaboration charter and a collaboration contract to set up a virtual office, because co-location is most important factor for success in collaborative project delivery. So they need to find a method for co-location, virtual co-location. I suggested some software and online platform, so they can, if they decide one, the group stick to one platform throughout the project. But each group, different groups can use different platforms. So back to the organizational chart here, this explains how I asked them to provide feedback. The feedback to different groups are not a general feedback. Now, for example, the first assignment, each group work out a business case for the projects. They do a presentation. Then they should tell if we are going to collaborate with all the other stakeholders, what I want you to do, what I want you to do. And then the other groups, they will give feedback based on their organizational interest. They said, no, we cannot afford to do this. Now we want you to change your plan. So this becomes, the feedback is a negotiation process. So all these groups got their feedback from the other stakeholders. They come back to redevelop their business case and come back as the second project. So this is how it works, make it an authentic process. The industry advisor, now I reduced the weight that we rely on them. They are to organize 1 or 2 project meetings to give students access. There are quite a lot of industry practitioners are very interested in influencing the young people. Some people ask me, how am I going to compensate their time? Normally, no, we can pay them through a university, but normally they don't need payment. They are just interested in working with the young people, and they can develop their potential employees in the future. Okay. Yeah.
Right. All right, on time, Andrea. Thank you very much. And that's our last presentation for today. And thank you everyone for engaging. And I've really enjoyed these weeks with the class. And hopefully we can continue to build this community of practice beyond this class as well. And looking forward to seeing the results of your course designs and redesigns. So thank you one and all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Thomas. It's been terrific. I think it would be unusual to get to the end of a subject and say to the coordinator, I look forward to meeting you, but that's true here. So one day we will see you. We'll see you down under.
Yeah, definitely. Let's keep in touch.
The big part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
And
Thank you
I'll
so
put
much,
this
Tom. Thank you,
recording.
everyone.
Put this recording on Canvas so you can come back to it and do your peer review feedback as well. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
See you later,
Bye.
Thomas. Bye, everyone.